From a secret love letter that was hidden for over a century to a president who literally married the girl he used to babysit, this is a look into the love lives of every US president. And honestly, some of these men had no business being in a relationship. Let's start at the beginning with George Washington, who married the very wealthy widow Martha Dandridge Custis in 1759. She came with 2 kids and a massive fortune, making her one of the richest women in Virginia, so George did pretty well for himself. But here's the thing most people don't realize. Washington might have been in love with someone else his entire life. Her name was Sally Fairfax, his neighbor's wife. In 1758, just months before marrying Martha, George wrote Sally a letter confessing his feelings. That letter was hidden for over 100 years until it surfaced in 1877. Whether anything physical ever happened, nobody knows, but the fact that Washington was writing love notes to another man's wife right before his own wedding is a level of drama I was not expecting from the father of our country. But if Washington's love life was complicated, John and Abigail Adams were the complete opposite. These two were the real deal. Their love letters are legendary, over 1,100 of them spanning decades, filled with everything from politics to genuine romance. Abigail was John's closest advisor and best friend. While he was away serving the country, she ran the family farm and still found time to write letters telling him to remember the ladies when forming the new government, a power couple before the term even existed. Then came Thomas Jefferson, and things got messy. After his wife Martha died, Jefferson promised her he'd never remarry, and technically he kept that promise. But this is where it gets deeply uncomfortable. Jefferson had a long relationship with Sally Hemings, an enslaved woman at Monticello who was also his dead wife's half-sister. DNA evidence confirmed in 1998 that Jefferson fathered at least one of her children, and most historians now believe he fathered all 6. The power dynamic here is impossible to ignore. Sally had no legal rights, no ability to consent as we understand it, and no freedom. Whatever that relationship was, it was not a love story. It was a stain on Jefferson's legacy. Moving on, James Madison married Dolly Payne Todd, a widow 17 years younger who became the most popular first lady of her time. She basically invented the role, hosting legendary parties and saving George Washington's portrait when the British burned the White House. Meanwhile, James Monroe had a quiet, solid marriage with Elizabeth Courtwright. No scandals, no drama. Honestly, kind of boring compared to what's coming. Because John Quincy Adams married Louisa Johnson, making her the only foreign-born first lady until Melania Trump. But their marriage was rocky. Louisa suffered from depression, and Adams was so emotionally distant she once wrote he had a heart of stone. Not a great review from your own wife. But nobody's love life was more tragic than Andrew Jackson's. He married Rachel Donaldson in 1791, believing her divorce from her first husband was finalized. It wasn't, so technically Rachel was a bigamist. They remarried once the divorce was official, but the damage was done. For the rest of Jackson's career, political enemies dragged Rachel's name through the mud. During the brutal 1828 presidential campaign, the attacks were so vicious she collapsed and died of a heart attack just weeks before Jackson's inauguration. He was devastated, reportedly saying at her funeral, "May God Almighty forgive her murderers. I never can." He blamed his opponents for killing his wife and carried that rage for the rest of his life. Martin Van Buren's wife died of tuberculosis at 35, and he never remarried. He didn't even mention her in his autobiography. Cold. William Henry Harrison eloped against his father-in-law's wishes, which was about the most exciting thing he ever did before dying 31 days into office. And John Tyler was the first president to get married while in office. After his first wife died, the 54-year-old Tyler married 24-year-old Julia Gardner, 30 years younger. It gets wilder. James Polk and his wife Sarah were all business. No kids, no scandals, just a pure political partnership. Zachary Taylor's main contribution? Forbidding his daughter from marrying a military man. She married Jefferson Davis anyway, the future president of the Confederacy. Thanksgiving must have been awkward. Then there's Millard Fillmore, who married his former teacher Abigail Powers. After she died, he remarried a wealthy widow for what most agree was companionship and convenience. And Franklin Pierce's wife Jane hated politics so much she fainted when he won. After their last surviving son was killed in a train wreck, she spent her time in the White House writing letters to her dead child. Pierce turned to alcohol and never recovered. And then there came James Buchanan, the only president who never married. His fiancée, Ann Coleman, broke off her engagement and died shortly after, possibly by suicide. Buchanan was so shattered he vowed never to marry. He lived with Senator William Rufus King for 15 years, a relationship so close that Andrew Jackson called them Miss Nancy and Aunt Fancy. Was Buchanan gay? Historians still debate it, but the circumstantial evidence is pretty strong. Abraham Lincoln's marriage to Mary Todd was a roller coaster. He broke off their engagement once, had an emotional breakdown, then got back together with her. After their son Willie died in the White House, Mary spiraled into grief. After Lincoln's assassination, her mental health deteriorated until her own son had her committed to an institution, a story that began with passion and ended in pure tragedy. Andrew Johnson married Eliza McArdle when he was 18 and she was 16. Here's the kicker: she taught him to read and write. Ulysses Grant and his wife Julia, on the other hand, were one of the most devoted couples. She'd show up at his camp during the Civil War so often that soldiers called her the General. And Rutherford Hayes married Lemonade Lucy, the First Lady with a college degree, who famously banned alcohol from the White House. James Garfield confessed to an affair early in his marriage. His wife Lucretia forgave him and they grew stronger. Chester Arthur's wife died before he became president, and he placed fresh flowers by her portrait in the White House every single day. But Grover Cleveland's love life is the one that makes you do a double take. In 1886, he married Frances Folsom in the White House. She was 21. He was 48. And here's the thing: Cleveland had known her since the day she was born. He was her father's law partner. He bought her first baby carriage. When her father died, Cleveland became her guardian. He married the girl he practically raised. Oh, and he also had a confirmed illegitimate child from another relationship. Let's just move on. Benjamin Harrison's first wife died while he was president, so he married her niece, who was 25 years younger. His own children refused to attend the wedding. Can't imagine why. William McKinley was fiercely devoted to his wife Ida, who suffered from epilepsy. During seizures at White House dinners, he would gently drape a handkerchief over her face and carry on as if nothing happened. Weird, but loyal. Teddy Roosevelt experienced one of the most devastating days imaginable. On Valentine's Day, 1884, both his wife Alice and his mother died in the same house on the same day. In his diary, he drew a large X and wrote, "The light has gone out of my life." He eventually remarried, but never spoke of Alice again. Woodrow Wilson was devastated when his first wife Ellen died. He married Edith Bowling Galt within a year. And when Wilson had a massive stroke in 1919, Edith essentially ran the executive branch in secret for over a year. She was the first shadow president, deciding who he saw and what he signed. A true shadow president. Warren Harding might hold the record for most reckless love life. He had an affair and a daughter with Nan Britton, confirmed by DNA testing in 2015. He also had a 15-year affair with his friend's wife. His own wife, Florence, was so suspicious she burned most of his papers after he died. Franklin Roosevelt married his fifth cousin, Eleanor. Their marriage survived his long affair with her social secretary, Lucy Mercer. After Eleanor found their love letters, the romance was over, but they became incredible political partners, and she became one of the most influential first ladies in history. Harry Truman met his wife Bess when he was 6 and spent decades convincing her to marry him. John F. Kennedy's affairs were legendary, most famously with Marilyn Monroe. His wife Jacqueline endured it all with a quiet dignity that made her an American icon. Lyndon Johnson was a notorious flirt. Richard Nixon basically stalked his future wife Pat with proposals until she said yes. Jimmy Carter married his sister's friend Rosalind, and they remained devoted for over 77 years, the longest presidential marriage in history. Ronald and Nancy Reagan were Hollywood's great love story. After a failed first marriage, Reagan found Nancy and never looked back. George H.W. Bush and Barbara were married for 73 years. Bill and Clinton are the power couple that survived the most public marital scandal in presidential history. George W. Bush met Laura at a barbecue, and she made him give up drinking, arguably saving his career before it started. Barack Obama and Michelle Obama became the aspirational couple of the 21st century, and Donald Trump has had 3 tabloid-famous marriages. Finally, Joe Biden. His first wife, Nelia, and infant daughter were killed in a car wreck just after he won his first Senate race. Years later, he met Jill Jacobs and proposed 5 times before she said yes. 5 times. That's some serious persistence. So, there you have it. The love lives of every US president, from secret letters and forbidding crushes to White House weddings and devastating heartbreak. Some of these men were hopeless romantics, others were just hopeless. But their stories remind us that behind the portraits and the monuments were real people, with lives just as messy, complicated, and dramatic as any of our own.